Northern Italy, a unique combination of world-famous mountains, places of magical beauty, and hidden treasures just waiting to be discovered. According to local legend, its stark mountain peaks are very close to the gods, threatening and bewitchingly beautiful at the same time. The many diverse landscapes provide living environments approaching paradise for both man and animal. The valleys and high plateaus have been inhabited for thousands of years. Small structured farms for raising crops and animals characterize the mountain slopes. This original and gentle stewardship of the land has even resulted in the creation of new habitats for wild animals. For that reason, this traditional lifestyle has its place even within the national parks. June is the time when the herds are driven to alpine pastures for summer grazing. Each year, about 3,000 sheep from the Schneid Valley face a great challenge. These animals have to negotiate 3,000-meter-high mountain passes to get to the lush meadows of Austria's Fenter Valley. The shepherds and their animals have climbed 1,300 meters in height by the time they reach the apex of the Niederjoch Pass. In the 80s, the sheep still had to make their way through permanent ice. Today, they clamber over open moraine fields. Global warming has left its tracks. In this area of the Alps, the melting ice revealed the well-preserved remains of the man in the ice. Ötzi, the nickname given to this archaeological find, was found in 1991 on the eastern flank of the last peak of the Hauslabjoch, located on the South Tyrolean side of the border between Italy and Austria. This mummy is proof that the Niederjoch served as a passageway between North and South Tyrol already about 5,300 years ago. After the difficult climb, the Sheep's Trek leaves the Texel Group Natural Reserve and descends into the Fenter High Plateaus at the back of the Ötz Valley. This border crossing from today's Italian soil into Austrian territory is a tradition with a history of over 500 years. Summer comes slowly to the mountains. While vacationers already bask in the heat on the sunny Mediterranean beaches, the snow is only just beginning to melt in the high valley. Extreme temperature fluctuations combined with water erosion split large sections of rock out of the cliff face. The change of the seasons brings unrest to the quiet mountain landscape, and the animals do well to find fitting cover against nature's violent adjustments. The rivers and streams fed by rain and melt-off are the lifelines of the landscape. The crystal-clear glacial streams offer ideal refuge to the marble trout and the mill trout. For the European dipper, the clear mountain streams are like life insurance. The European dipper is one of the few songbirds that continuously live right on the water's edge. There, they feed on worms and insects. Polluted waters are a threat to the survival of this species because of the resulting lack of sufficient nutrition. Wherever the forest thins out to form a clearing, the black grouse greets the spring season with his courtship ritual. The bird performs this mating dance at the same location year after year. Springtime starts with hard work for the black woodpecker. Nesting hollows need to be laboriously chiseled out of the trees. Even though partially rotted trees are chosen as brooding places, the wood still offers significant resistance for the woodpecker's hard beak. The male and female birds take turns at their carpentry work. The continual hammering doesn't seem to bother the red squirrel. It also seems as though they actively seek the company of these industrious birds. The capercaillie, or wood grouse, on the other hand, seeks lonely refuge in the forest underbrush, an excellent hiding place. For ornithologists, his courtship behavior is always something special. One needs to approach with great care in order to witness this impressive spectacle, however. This feather-footed fowl reacts very quickly to any disturbance. For that reason, scientists and forest rangers keep the locations of the bird's courting arenas a well-guarded secret. Scientists believe that the capercaillie migrated from the cold northern regions to the warmer south during the last ice age. As the ice slowly retreated, an estimated 15,000 years ago, the grouse again migrated northward or took the higher elevations in the mountains. So, for this wild fowl with the unusual song, the Alps are a southern island far removed from their original habitat. Obviously, the European pygmy owl is also an attentive observer of the capercaillie's courting games. This smallest representative of the owl family is only slightly larger than its namesake. By the time the mountain flowers bloom to their full majesty, flora in the valleys is already beginning to go to seed. A variety of different plants flourish depending on the characteristics of the soil. Plants like the short-leaf gentian, the midget heavenly herald, or Etricium hanum, or the dolomite houseleek, also called live forever. The mountain forests just below the tree line provide habitat for the Tengmalm's owl. A type of squatter, this owl prefers to occupy tree hollows left behind by the spotted woodpecker. The crested tit acts a bit more responsibly and chisels out its own hollow. The soft wood of rotting pines, larch, or fir trees is especially suitable material to carve a comfortable home out of. All climatic zones are represented in the 3,000-meter elevation variance within the Texel Group Nature Reserve. The Parchinser waterfall drains part of its upper plateau. It is one of the most impressive waterfalls of the alpine region. Each hour, between 4,000 and 10,000 liters of melt-off and rainwater cascade the 97 meters in free fall to the valley below. The European eagle owl lives in small clefts or caves in the rocky cliff faces. Even though it normally seems to prefer brooding up on the cliffs, this largest of the owl family occasionally chooses secondary nesting biotopes, such as rock quarries, for example. The birds are not bound to a particular climate or landscape. In the flatland, it nests in small caves in the ground, or occupies the abandoned nests of other birds of prey. On the southern hang of the Texel Group, the Mediterranean climate has created an entirely different situation. Many hours of sunshine and little rainfall have combined to create steppe landscapes in some places. This steppe environment is most obvious around the Kastelfeda in the Trudna Horn Nature Reserve. At first glance, it's hard to imagine that this nearly barren hill, at one time very strategic for the local feudal lords, could offer animals a useful habitat. But there are inhabitants which have adapted well to the inhospitable conditions. They are, however, very shy. It takes a trained eye and sharp discernment to make out in the tall grass and thick underbrush that which rarely reveals itself to the human eye. To actually get to see one of these rare and highly endangered Aesculapian snakes is a real stroke of luck. Not to worry, meeting up with Central Europe's largest snake is no cause for concern. They are harmless. In nature, it's much more likely for humans to be seen rather than see themselves. This is particularly true for those species living in the dense underbrush. Nature's harsh law of eating and being eaten applies just as well here in the nature reserves of South Tyrol. The wasp spider eats anything it catches in its web in order to itself become prey at some point to a bird or a lizard. The antlion is a typical representative in warm open fields. Its larvae bury themselves in the ground and lurk for prey at the end of their funnel-shaped burrows. The European praying mantis also prefers dry and sunny regions. Originally from Africa, it has spread in the meantime from the Mediterranean region over Asia to South Africa and is widespread in the USA and Australia. The climatic and scenic contrast within the Texel group could not be more pronounced. In the south, the Sonnenberg radiates Mediterranean grace, while only a few kilometers away, Scandinavian conditions prevail. The water storage capacity of its common porous rock geology captured the melting glacial liquid, making the northern part of the Texel group very rich in water reserves. Ice and snow also played a major role in forming the landscape of the Riesa-Ferner Arn Nature Reserve. Its master builder was Melthoff, which hollowed out the cracked moraine rock. Where random areas of bedrock protected the sediment, a forest of earth pyramids remained. The lofty extremities, Fanes, Senes, and Phasis, unreal and of bizarre beauty, they form a majestic circus of mountain monoliths. Underground drainage and karst erosion characterize this part of the Dolomites. The eye's only refreshment are the occasional places where springs bubble up or small mountain lakes lay nestled in green alcoves. When the water level is low in Pitchata Lake, a particular phenomenon of this karst landscape can be observed on the northeastern shore. A funnel-shaped sinkhole sucks the lake water underground with an unquenchable thirst. Further down toward the valley, it reappears briefly, flowing from water-storing layers of rock, only to seep into the ground again. Finally, the water breaks into daylight again in the lower-lying forests. In Finchgau, where there is little rainfall, Melthoff does not seep into the ground, but is captured above ground by man-made irrigation canals. Since the Middle Ages, these small masonry canals have carried the precious liquid into the dry regions. Ancient laws regulate the use of the water. Already in the 13th century, the ruling monarch levied a tax on the water rights. Until the 1950s, 600 kilometers of the old waterways were still in operation. A large part of those have been shut down over the last few decades. There are more than 1,700 alpine pastures in South Tyrol, all of which were created several centuries ago. Thanks to the traditional method of cutting the grass using scythes and the avoidance of all fertilizer, hardy meadows, also called lean meadows, boasting a rich variety of alpine flora, have been maintained. Over the past decades, however, mass tourism and intensive modern agricultural activity have caused the rich blossom tapestry to grow pale. Over 80 types of plants grow on 50 square meters of healthy lean meadow. On fertilized meadows, on the other hand, one finds only a handful of different plants. Dragonflies are a dependable indication of an intact, moist biotope with standing water. This king dragonfly has chosen a man-made biotope. The Fulsa Pond was originally created for raising fish. Today, this beautiful mountain lake is part of a nature reserve and is a treasured refuge for the animal world. But even here, the animals have to deal with the presence of man. Over the years, a healthy lakeshore landscape has developed with water-purifying vegetation and enough living space for frogs, amphibians, and reptiles. Often, seemingly useless marshy meadows form when small lakes dry up or when the groundwater levels rise. Upon closer observation, however, they turn out to be valuable ecological bogs hosting unique botanical combinations. Over 20 cliff face summits, which rise up to or beyond the 3,000-meter mark in the eastern Dolomites, have been exercising an almost magical attraction on climbers and mountaineers since time immemorial. The Drei Zinnen, or Three Battlements, are world-renowned in the mountaineering scene. Every summer, thousands of mountain athletes drive their rope hooks into the cliff. To this wall climber, their laborious efforts seem rather silly. The athletes don't take much note of the many different plants and small life forms which live in the nooks and crannies of the cliff face. Every handhold and every foothold demands their full concentration. The flood of vacationers looking for relaxation leaves its mark. More and more animals are driven into habitats which are often unsuitable, or, as in the case of the alpine marmot, are forced to become accustomed to the presence of man. Both man and beast are equally at the mercy of the fickle moods of nature in the high mountains. Weather swings can turn hot summer conditions into a winter snowstorm within a matter of minutes. Then only an alpine hut or an available cave can provide shelter. Then it's just a matter of patiently waiting until nature is finished venting her fury. It is assumed that thousands of caves were formed in ancient times as the mountains folded in on themselves as the African continent collided with the Eurasian continental plate. Only very few of the caves have been explored to date. The Contorinus cave was discovered quite by accident in 1987 by a fossil hunter. The entry lies at an altitude of 2,800 meters. The floor of the cave is strewn with hundreds of bones. Closer examination has shown that they could well be the remains of cave bears. Some scientists believe that cave bears existed already in prehistoric times. This significant find of very old bones provides clear evidence that the inhospitable dolomite gravel fields must have been a very fertile area in ages past. Today, hardly anything grows around the cave. Even groundhogs avoid the area. Until today, the rich treasure chest of South Tyrolean folklore contains many local sagas which live on. Many of them involve the alpine marmot. One tale would have it that the marmots were once considered to be the rulers of the kingdom of the Fanes. People considered the animals to be holy. When people turned away from the marmot and declared the eagle to be the symbol of their crest, however, luck ran out for the Fanes people. The name of the stair-shaped rock formation on the small Fanes, the Marmot Parliament, stands as a reminder of the ancient tale. According to the saga, the unhappy Fanes people are still waiting patiently underground for the sounding of the silver trumpet signaling the restoration of their kingdom. The Prußgeisler Nature Reserve is considered to be an open book on the Earth's history. All around the mountain peaks, typical dolomite rocks, layers of sediment, and weather-eroded formations are to be found. In contrast to common limestone, the resistant dolomite stone is not made up of calcium carbonate, but rather calcium-magnesium carbonate. The various layers of sediment, thought by some to have been laid down by gradual means over long periods of time, and by others by forces unleashed more quickly through catastrophic natural events, can be seen with the naked eye. The red layers of the Grudna limestone could have originated from earlier rivers. While the openly visible fossils of sea snails and other mollusks testify to the extent of the Mediterranean Sea, also called Tethys, sometime in the distant past. Nearly untouched nature is only to be found in remote regions of the rocky cliff landscape, in inaccessible gorges, or on glaciers. But even up here at the impressive altitude of 2,600 meters, some animals have made themselves at home. The common European viper. It is not unusual to find this snake at altitudes with guaranteed harsh winters. It is common throughout the Earth and can even be found north of the Arctic Circle. As the days grow shorter and the leaves put on their garment of fall colors, things begin to quiet down on the alpine pastures. As soon as the trees change colors, the rutting calls of the red deer stag echoes through the forests. The dominant bucks make their claim to their herd of female animals loud and clear. Instead of concerning themselves with feeding, the stags give themselves nearly exclusively to the task of defending their rank and to mating. In the wild, being strong does not necessarily mean being able to enjoy an easier life. Having the genetic advantage demands the tribute of continually having to prove that strength. Around the end of November, beginning in December, after the grazing herds have been driven back down into the valleys, the cliff regions also become more lively. Up here, it is the chamois bucks which engage in breakneck battles in competition for the favor of the female goats. Although fairly large animals, their size and weight don't seem to limit the agility of these strong creatures very much at all. The animal which has proven his superiority in battle has thus earned the right to mate. And in the high mountains, even this is a balancing act which is not completely devoid of danger. A golden eagle observes the proceedings from high up in the crown of the trees. As the chamois, he is unmoved by even the most harsh winter. When food is scarce, he is happy with picking over carcasses of dead animals. There are always plenty of those during the winter. Natural selection assures the eagle's survival. The alpine ptarmigan also doesn't bother to take refuge at lower elevations, even during harsh winters. Even in deep snow, this perfectly camouflaged fowl still manages to find buds, seeds, berries, and roots to eat. The clever bird protects itself against ice and snow in hollows in the cold white blanket, cozy snow caves that provide it with constant and survivable temperatures. The winter months give fauna and flora a much-needed break from the influence and presence of man. The government of South Tyrol has done well to strictly limit or completely prohibit winter sports in designated and marked protected areas.